Good afternoon and welcome here from the DHL Innovation Center in Troisdorf, Germany. My name is Klaus Dormann. I'm with DHL and I'm responsible for the global sector development of the group. Today I'm really glad to join this Service Logistics Summit, this inspiration session, and I'd like to thank the Service Logistics Forum for inviting me to that session. Please remember that you can ask your questions via the chat function, and of course I'm happy to answer any of these questions after the presentation. So my topic today is about post-coronavirus supply chain recovery, and this is based on a white paper I did together with Professor Richard Wilding from Cranfield University. And what I try to do is I'd like to link this topic on how supply chains will develop post-COVID with your theme of the event, which is product as a service, something that's even close to my heart actually as well, and I come to that. So when we look at the broader picture, think of supply chain transformation, I think we're facing a perfect storm actually, and this is nothing that only started with the COVID pandemic earlier this year. So you do see these three elements I highlighted on the slide. So let's start with the first one. We're definitely living in the age of the customer. So we see customer demands changing. We see customer requirements moving from a B2C to a B2B world. And ultimately, we are living in an experience economy where companies compete via customer experience, where ownership is less important, but access to assets is more important. And this, of course, ties into your theme of products as a service. Next to that, we have Industry 4.0 and all the technologies that come with it. Also nothing new, but something that we all can leverage within supply chain management, but of course also within our businesses to drive further growth and efficiencies at the same time. And last not least, of course, there's also the COVID pandemic, which actually accelerated many of the trends we've seen before. And I try to highlight this in my presentation today as well. So this all translates into a new environment I think we're facing. And this is true for supply chains as well as for businesses. So it's all going to be about being more customer-centric, being, of course, more resilient and agile, mainly, of course, driven by the COVID crisis. But we've seen this also with the trade wars and the changing regulations before COVID. Then this whole topic of circular economy and sustainability still being important and maybe even being more important, also driven by consumers and customer demand. We're going to be digital and we're going to be servitized. So this topic of servitization, products as a service, will be even more important going forward with these three drivers in mind. And with all of that, we are facing a time where supply chains need to transform. And I want to focus later on that transformation and highlight some aspects where we as DHL feel you and your companies should have a certain focus on. But let's start recapping the advantages of products as a service, or XaaS, everything as a service, which is a huge opportunity, and I guess you might have heard that already today. Highlighting a couple of things, but you will recognize that this is also extremely tied to the post-COVID world, the post-COVID situation. So all these benefits, all these opportunities have been accelerated by the COVID pandemic. On the economic side, everything as a service is an opportunity for additional revenue pools, for additional profit pools, for higher margins, and really important now in these pandemic days, a stability of revenue and cash flow. On the strategic side, everything as a service is the opportunity to differentiate, to lock out your competition, and at the same time lock in your customer, moving closer to the customer. And also important for your customers, I guess, reducing the investment needs of your customers in these challenging times. Last not least, the third column around environmental topics and compliance. Everything as a service is driving sustainability, is driving the circular economy, making your assets and the assets being run by your customers more efficient, and ultimately driving sustainability. And as I said, all of this has been kind of accelerated. The needs have been increased by the COVID crisis. So let's have a look on how we see the development of that crisis and what areas we feel are important during certain phases. So on the one hand, you see the lockdown, and being here in Germany, we are currently facing our second lockdown as many other countries in the world. And on the other hand, there is this new normal, the post-pandemic world, where the world has been changed, of course. Everything is more digital than before, hopefully also more efficient and kind of stable. But we feel what is important is the phase in between. This is what we call the pre-new normal. It's this phase of ramping up production, of demand coming back again. And we feel it's very crucial to have a close look at this and to diligently plan for this phase, because ramping up production, getting the right insights on changing demand is really crucial to be successful. And only by doing this in an efficient and effective way, we all will be able to turn our businesses and our operations into this new normal. And then you see in the new normal, the last topic I highlighted are new business models. This is exactly what we meant when we did the study about products as a service. So we are convinced that we will see more of these kind of service-based business models in the future across all sectors. Diving into certain areas that have increased in terms of importance during the COVID crisis. Of course, there is resilience. Our customers are talking about supply chain needs, supply chains that need to be more resilient and more agile. You see a longer list here of topics that we really want you and your supply chain operations to focus on. For me, the most important point is actually the first one: map your supplier network. We've seen that during the crisis, during the lockdown, many companies recognize that they don't have the transparency on their supplier network, for sure not on the tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. So mapping this network, knowing your suppliers, and that's true for inbound and for outbound flows, is really important. So mapping all the locations, looking at your distribution networks, and then the last point talks here about collaboration. This is even more important going forward during the pre-new normal, but also in the new normal phase. Having a closer collaboration, this includes a closer exchange of data and insights, will be crucial for success. Next topic, demand. I think I touched this already. During the lockdown, and these days, I think now more and more people recognize what the bullwhip effect is, and we all felt this for many products. We are convinced that this bullwhip effect will not go away. We'll see, in future phases, the bullwhip effect coming back to a higher or to a lesser degree, but will not go away. And with this, it's just important that your demand planning is right, your customer insights are right, that the exchange of information with your suppliers is accurate in order to be successful. And then second point I want to highlight here is know your true cost to serve. We see many companies going different channel strategies, adding new channels, and of course the most prominent one is e-commerce. Many of these companies did this in a very successful way when it came to revenue, but not so much when it came to profit, because managing the cost to serve is the art of being successful in this environment. So have a close look at it. The third topic I want to mention is the physical move of goods within your transportation networks, but also within the four walls of your warehouses. What we do expect is to achieve an additional and increasing resilience is a diversification of supply chains. So this is not the end of globalization. I feel this is a really important topic, but I think we will see a more diversified set of supply chains, maybe having still a long, very efficient, cost-driven supply chains for certain products, but at the same time having something like a lifeline, an emergency supply chain for urgent or important topics or products, for high-value goods, for example, or for these lockdown situations. This is called the bimodal supply chain. You might have heard of that term, of that concept, and we see this coming more and more, driving resilience, but requiring flexibility in your supply chain. Managing costs and lead times. I think you've seen the number on the other slide saying that 20% of the companies are planning to increase their inventory levels. Of course, this is an insurance premium you're paying, increasing your inventory levels and increasing your cost of capital, but of course, with this, it helps you to increase resilience and flexibility. And then last not least, people and skills. So within the four walls, within the warehouses, of course, we will see more and more automation and robotics. Also, nothing new for us as a company in our operations, and nothing new for most of supply chain and logistics people. However, of course, we see this increasing social distancing, also requiring some changes and some more digital solutions to that. And with this comes the requirement for the appropriate skills of our colleagues. And really, I want to emphasize to look at this also in a very diligent way, not to forget the change that is required and the new skills that are required. So summing this up in these few bullets here, so we are convinced we will see, based on this reassessment on supply chains, a reshaping of supply chains. I mentioned the bimodal supply chain, I mentioned the supply chain diversification, and this will enable everybody to be more resilient and more flexible and having more robust supply chains. Second, we will see changes in the transportation flows, in the warehousing setups. We'll see warehouses in certain areas for certain products moving closer to the market, closer to the customer or to the user. And it's certainly true for the aftermarket business. And then, of course, we'll see these change practices, change processes within the four walls of operations, in particular within the warehouses. And technology, automation, and robotics is a big driver, a big lever for that. But the two important things I want to highlight is supply chain innovation has never been more important than today in this perfect storm that requires a transformation of supply chains. And collaboration is the key to that. I mentioned this for your supplier network, for the entire supply chains, but I want to add also logistics service providers and other service providers in this area that it's really crucial to collaborate in order to be more successful and more flexible in these days. There's a place to do that. You see, I'm here in the Innovation Center in Germany, close to our headquarters. We are using these innovation centers like this one. We have one in Chicago, one in Singapore, to engage with you, with our customers, with our partners, to really work on these future topics, the trends we are seeing. And I want to invite you to join us, to join the conversation based on your needs and your customer needs. We love to do this in a physical way. But as you can see, we are also set up to do this in a virtual way. So please reach out to me or my DHL colleagues, and we are always happy to welcome you in one of these centers, virtual or physical. Last but not least, please feel free to download our thought leadership white papers on the topics I mentioned. The post-coronavirus supply chain recovery white paper is available for download for free. And we also did 2 papers on the topic of servitization and the implications for supply chains. So also here, please feel free to use that knowledge and that thought leadership. And also feel free to come back with me with your thoughts and your questions. With this, I close for now. And I want to thank you again. I want to thank the Service Logistics Forum for the invitation. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions in the chat. Thank you.